All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning. It's good morning for us here in Tokyo. I hope you all are having a beautiful week and day so far. Today, I am so excited to have a very special guest, and I know it's going to be such a great conversation because whenever I meet with this specific person, we always have very great conversations. And I'm so excited to introduce Emily Morgan, who is a wellness life coach and an English coach that is currently based in Japan, just like me. So, welcome, Emily, to the Light of Insight.
You, Nina, for having me. I'm so excited and a little nervous.
Yes.
But
Oh,
yes, we do have some good conversations. So,
yes, we do. And the first question that I always like to start out with all of my guests is what's lighting you up right now?
yeah, what is lighting me up? I mean, I have to be honest, like I'm going through like a really big life transition. I'm turning 27 and like we talked like this return.
Yeah.
Like I'm feeling like I'm entering I actually looked it up and I'm like entering like the year before it where the effects start and um well whether you're into astrology or not like for the people that are listening like it's just like a big like oh the 27 years that I've been alive like is it aligned with who I actually am and what I want for my life, and it's been hard to find joy in things that I used to find joy in a sense where I'm kind of like questioning everything and being like, okay, am I kind of clinging on to these things because I don't want to like move to a different stage in my life? So amidst all of that, like what's been in a sense lighting me up is journaling. I picked it up again. I'm a big writer, and when things get busy in life, I it tends to fall away the habit. Um, but I noticed that the more that I write, it doesn't really matter what's going on around me. I feel very grounded and secure in what I believe in and more connected to my inner world. I mean, I meditate, but there's just something about putting my feelings into words that feels so good to my system. So that's really been kind of helping me a lot and bringing me joy, honestly. Yeah, because it's just like, it's so nice to be able to just be like, life. And like, paper is like the least non judgmental person on this planet. So,
That is so funny. I've never thought about it like that, but you're right. Paper is so non-judgmental. I love that. Oh, also, yes, so for my listeners that have never heard of a Saturn return, I will link perhaps an article or something that kind of explains the
mm,
gist of a Saturn return. You can also check if you're in your Saturn return as well. I think it happens three different periods of your life. So the first is what Emily said, this 27, late 20s, 27, 28, 29, 29 age where you're just entering or in the middle of the Saturn return. And you always kind of know, I'm personally in my Saturn return right now. And you know when you're in it when things get a little bit shaky, but it's it's a good thing too because it's trying to get you back to living a life that is really aligned and real and authentic to you. So with that comes perhaps big transitions, losing jobs, cutting people out of your life, losing relationships that are just not working out, and it's really hard and can be painful, but also so worth it on the other side. So I'm happy that you brought that into the conversation because I don't think Saturn returns on this podcast yet. I do sometimes talk about astrology and human design, but I haven't talked specifically about the Saturn return. And it's, yeah, you're in for a ride if you haven't entered it yet. But I hope. that if you haven't entered your Saturn return, don't get nervous about it. I think you just need to fully embrace it because there's so much that you learn about yourself and who you are if you're open to it. So that's kind of the Saturn return. And also, I love that journaling is lighting you up because I feel so connected to everything that you just said about journaling being this super safe space where you're able to feel more connected to yourself. I absolutely agree. I'm so interested, what kind of, let's say, how do you enter a journaling practice with yourself? Do you like to do it just intuitively when you get up in the morning, or do you have specific prompts that you like to journal about? What's sort of your practice?
So previously, up until the big 27, I just it was very intuitive. I just was like, I want to write, and I'll just like write, and I'll let that lead me where I need to go. And usually, it's like when you trust that something will come out of nothing, like that's when the best things like happen in my journaling practice. Um, like I'll be writing, and then I'll hear different. I know it's kind of weird, but I'll hear different voices inside of myself. Like I'll hear the inner critic, and now I recognize, oh, okay, that's the inner critic, and then I'll hear like my higher self, or like the me that knows better, just like writing its voice out, and I'll be like, whoa, like that's that's so cool, like, and I love that process, but at the same time, it's just hard when things get really busy to even have that like, okay, I really want to write sort of feeling. Um, and especially now I feel like for me, it's been best to shift towards having structure. So, right now I'm trying to make like a habit out of journaling in the morning and the nighttime, and then I kind of make morning my free sort of like the morning pages sort of style where you just like you don't stop writing and then you just kind of flow with it. And then what I try to do some like breath work and meditation before I get into journaling because I feel like it helps loosen me up, get my mind a little like settled, and it helps me stay more non-judgmental because I feel like even though paper is non-judgmental, we can be judging what we write, you know.
Yes.
And I don't I want to get out of that and be like, I can just write nonsense and that'll be okay. So I'll do that. And then whatever comes up in my journaling, I don't want to just keep it at that, but I also want to help myself process whatever comes up. So I might like scribble or, kind of like sit with the sensations that are coming up in order to really embody whatever it is that, you know, helped, uh, that journaling helped bring up for me. And then at nighttime, I don't do that. It's a lot more structured where I kind of write maybe like one thing that happened, what that meant for me. Just like that shift from like, oh, it happened to me, and we're like, okay, what does this mean for me? And by framing it in that way, and it's just like one or two lines, very easy. I try to make it as easy as possible so I can like make it a habit, but um, it kind of helps me focus on why I felt a certain way about something that happened during my day. And it kind of helps me take better action moving. I don't really have the intention to like take that out of it, but it kind of just naturally happens because maybe, we all get triggered. Like maybe I'll get triggered by something and then I'll be like, okay, so what did this mean for me? Oh, okay, maybe I need this, or I value this, or I need some space to do this. And that's why I got triggered. Or maybe it was something happy. Oh, it must mean that, um, this is really important to me and maybe I should bring more of that into my life, something like that. And then I go over maybe like a few things that I felt helped me feel accomplished throughout the day. The small win mindset.
Yes. Hmm.
No matter how small, there's always a small win. And it helps me get out of like feeling like I'm not doing enough. Um,
Hmm.
and then the last thing is just like a few things that I felt grateful for. And I try not to force myself to feel grateful, but really tune into what I naturally feel like I'm glad to have in my life. And then that's a wrap.
Wow. I was just thinking how there's just so much there that you can do with journaling, as you shared, because people that want to get into journaling but don't know where to start, Emily just offered some really great ways that aren't too intimidating. I love the small win mindset, the gratitude list. I love it as like an embodiment practice, whatever you write down, feel into your sensations and really just feel it in your body. I I love that so much and I really like doing that as well with journaling. I'm now interested. You've been offering such a beautiful, and it's such a beautiful self-compassion practice as well, as you noted, is to make you feel like, okay, yeah, I'm still on the right track to whatever my goals are, whatever my dreams are. And it's such a great way to record and reflect back on as well. I'm now interested, I know my listeners will be too, about your background because you were
Okay.
able to give such a beautiful introduction to what's lighting you up right now with journal writing. I do want to ask you, it's a big question, what is your background? And maybe we can start intuitively wherever feels right for you.
So I was born in Japan, and my mom's Japanese, and my dad, he was born and grew up in the US. And I moved with my family to the US when I was maybe two-ish, three-ish. And we went to California and I stayed there until I was 18. And along the way, I think when I was maybe in elementary school, I watched this Japanese drama called Boys Over Flowers, I think in English.
Mhm.
I feel like um, maybe the younger listeners might not like have heard, but like it was like one of the big like hits back when I was in like elementary school. But like it was the first time I watched anything like from Japan, and up until then, from what my mom said, like she tried to make me go to like Japanese school, and I was like, no way, like I don't want to go. And I don't know why I watched it and I was like, what is this? This is magic. And it just like lit me up inside. And ever since then, I had like this obsession with learning Japanese, and just wanting to go to Japan and live there. And I knew a little bit of Japanese from like my mom speaking it to me, but I really dived deep into that world. And also that was along in that process, I think I really got into like psychology, and I wouldn't say coaching quite yet, but just like the matters of the heart and the mind, and um, also how that relates to like learning a language as well. So like linguistics. um, and I ended up like yeah being really good at Japanese at some point, like in high school, and I was like, hey mom, I'm going to Japan. I know you don't want me to go, but I'll save up the money and I'm going.
Oh.
Yeah. It was just like one of the things in my life. Like it doesn't happen a lot, but where I'm just like, it's gonna happen. Like I'm not like me and manifestation have like a weird relationship because I don't really like believe it's so black and white. But I do know that like when you have such a strong conviction and it's from like deep within your soul, like it happens. Like and that was like one of the things where I was like, oh, this is probably like what manifestation is because everything just happened really smoothly. I came here, I adjusted, I went to university in Japan on scholarship, even because my mom's like, you're paying for university if you're going to Japan. And I'm like, okay, I'll find a way. And I I graduated from ICU and I studied psychology, clinical psychology. Um, and also for my senior thesis, I delved really deep into like mindfulness and like Eastern philosophy and how that ties into kind of like Western therapy models. Um, and now um, I'm kind of at a crossroads, I guess, with what I want to do with my life because I originally wanted to be a clinical psychologist, so I was debating whether or not to get my master's degree in the US, and that's still on my mind a little bit. But I'm also a creative and I love making music, and I've always wanted to kind of explore that side of me and wondering if that's a route that I want to invest my time and energy in. And that's probably like one of the big themes of like the Saturn return is like I dedicate a lot of my time to like learning coaching and psychology for the first like half of my 20s. Um, but what do I want to do with that now? So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And yeah, I incorporate like everything I learned in that world with like also teaching English in Japan. Um, yeah, I've been teaching English for like a while, so it's just so interesting to see how all my experiences kind of connect with that as well, and helping people kind of get into like the matters of the mind and heart through something because like everyone in Japan wants to learn English, you know. So Um, but then I'll be like, hey, did you know that you'll learn better if you connect with your heart more? Like,
Right. I'm so interested. So I never thought about, yeah, maybe I have more recently. So language is such a big thing in Japan for sure. Like everyone wants to learn English here. And then especially for people like us who have these bicultural in between backgrounds, maybe one parent is Japanese or you were raised in the US by Japanese parents, you grew up speaking English but not Japanese. There's this desire, and I hear that that was your desire when you were quite young to just learn Japanese almost obsessively, it sounds like. So, so just jumping to when you were talking about how this kind of connects with like psychology, language learning, linguistics, psychology coaching, how did you bridge those? I think I know what you mean by language learning can make create feelings of insecurity when you're not at a certain goal. I definitely feel that way with Japanese language. And it's also interesting too with this debate of specifically in Japan, like, are you even Japanese
mm,
if you're not fluent?
mm,
And I think that hurts a lot of people or hits at something in their heart where it's like, whoa, even though I don't sound exactly like a native Japanese, but I have Japanese blood in me, or it doesn't even need to be blood related. You still identify as a Japanese person. Like, there's so many also questions related to ethnicity in here and I guess national identity, cultural identity. But I think I digressed a little bit. So if we bring it back, so the question is, I'm trying to formulate, how is language tied to coaching matters of the heart and mind?
Yeah. So I think like a big theme in my life is I've never been like the biggest like go go like achieve sort of person. I like to take my time. I'm slower than most people. I know that I am and I own it. Um, but in that process, I really like to find the connection between like learning something, like the learning journey. And this is like language learning, but also I dance and I also write songs and I sing and um I like to see how that connects to my heart and like how my relationship to myself kind of reflects with how I'm doing, or how I'm expressing myself, or how I'm not expressing myself, in whatever medium. Because like language is also a medium. It's just a way to express yourself in a different way. Um, so when I teach English, I see a lot of people. Okay, this is gonna get like very like maybe borderline esoteric, possibly, but
I love that.
um, but so like the mind, the mind and the heart, the logical side of you and the intuitive side of you. I think we all have both, but I feel like a lot of people, especially maybe in Japan, maybe like swing more towards like being in their mind a lot. And I'm not saying like being in your mind is a bad thing, like it's necessary in certain situations, but when it comes to learning something, when you're so attached to like ideas, for example, in language learning, maybe you're attached to like grammar rules, or maybe you're very attached to um, saying the right thing, um, or you're wanting to control what you understand, and not accepting that it's like a very intuitive process, you kind of get in your own way. Like, and I see a lot of people just quit learning English or whatever they're learning because they're trying so hard to understand something that you need to experience with your body, um, through just like learning how to be curious. And if I give you like an even more specific example, because it's a little bit hard to explain, but when I learned Japanese, I tried doing it the whole textbook way, but it didn't feel right to me. And I've always been more of an intuitive person, and just like things felt really heavy in my body when it just didn't fit. So I was just like, okay. Um, and at that time, I found this blog. Oh, if you're learning Japanese, like Katsumoto, like AJATT. I think some people, some listeners might be like, well, like, because like he was like one of the big, like, if you want to learn Japanese, like this is the way to do it, like guys back in the day. And his like ideas blew my mind. Like he's kind of one of the people that influenced the way that I think and teach now. But he was like, when I found his ideas, I was like, okay, I don't really have to like make this so hard for myself. I just have to engage with the language in front of me in a way that feels like good to my body. And I have to respect the process, that my subconscious mind is making connections like kind of making a system for the new input that's coming in, and I just have to trust that instead of like being like, okay, I need to get this like this grammar rule in, and I have to remember everything, and I okay this word and that word and like this whole logical like approach, which is very stressful. I see it also. So like kind of like making it a more subconscious process as well, rather than like a very conscious like the balance between that, I think, is what helps people keep going and also helps people get past a lot of common problems, such as like, oh, like when it comes down to it, like I can't really use what I learned
Mm-hmm.
because that happens with like dancing and singing too. Like you can learn all you want, like logically, and try to control the outcome, but you really need to just be curious and let yourself explore and allow your subconscious to kind of make a lot of connections and respect the process.
I'm obsessed with what you're saying so much right now. Wow. I don't think we've talked about this too much in terms of like intuition and learning a language or art, but this is so, I'm sure this is going to resonate with a lot of people because everyone wants to learn and improve something in their life, a skill, an art, whatever it is. And I was just reflecting the whole time as you were talking about this with my, because I also dance as well. And it's so true. Like, I reflect back on the times in dance class where I was so in my head when it's a little bit more choreography heavy, dense lesson. And those are usually the ones that immediately I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to learn this? Okay, I need to focus. I need to be in the head. I mean, I don't say that to myself, but then it happens though. And then I can also say this for learning a language too, like Japanese, the
Yeah.
textbooks, the rules, the structure, all of that, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I do believe that's it's needed, but there's something there where intuition, whether it's a dance class or a language, and kind of allowing yourself to lead with what you said, curiosity, somehow it just like starts to flow out of you. And you're like, oh, I forgot that I knew that much, or I forgot that I actually didn't, my body didn't know how to move and follow the choreography, but more in my way. It doesn't need to look exactly like the teachers or the student next to you. And that's also more fun and enjoyable as you are on this journey to become the dancer you want to be or Japanese language speaker you want to be. It's such a, I feel like you can create your own course on this whole topic because it's so,
Okay.
so interesting. Yeah, I really, really like this topic. I don't know, intuitively that felt very like, whoa, because I think it would be so cool to learn about how to even go about doing that in
Mhm.
a class or as you build up a skill or as you work with a teacher one on
Mhm.
one. Can you give an example? Do you integrate and talk with your students, whether it's your English clients or wellness coaching? How, when you see someone really in their mind as they start to learn, we can use the English language as an example when you're teaching your classes or in your sessions, like how do you guide someone to kind of drop more into their bodies or come out of the logical mind? I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's a lot um harder with English, honestly. Like for coaching, it's like that's ultimately like they want to do that, so they come to me. And in my coaching though, a lot of people they think that they're feeling their feelings, but they're not. Like they're ruminating on their feelings or they're thinking about their feelings. So
Yes.
just me recognizing that and then being like, hey, like, can you like drop into your body a little bit more? Like, how does that feeling feel for you? And it kind of kickstarts that curiosity. I think that's just like the word curiosity. I want people to stop judging themselves. I mean, even like judging themselves, like you can be curious about why you judge yourself. Like sometimes we judge ourselves for judging ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but when I see that in my English classes, it's a little bit harder because they're here to learn English, not to like get coached, you know? Um, but that's kind of why I created like a method of um so I don't have a textbook. I kind of create my own material and I try to incorporate all these ideas into that material. So instead of focusing so much on remembering what I said or um, delving into like deep analysis of words and concepts. I might like obviously I have to like go over it a little bit, but especially with people who tend to be in their mind, like I try not to like I'm just like okay, I'm gonna like tell you what this means, but then we're just gonna go into like embodying that, okay? And then we I tell them like it's okay if you don't understand, just um try um acting as if like you're already there in the converse. Like so we'll role play a lot. And not just like role play, I'm just like I have them be actors. Like um I'll tell them to put more emotion in it, like really like say it like you mean something and it kind of like triggers something. Like they might be repeating after me for a while and it'll be like really robotic and they don't understand what they're saying, but then I'm just like, okay, let's try it. Here we go. And I'll have them be super mindful, and this is kind of a trick, but when you look into someone's eyes, you can't help but be mindful. That's why people avoid eye contact. Because when you
Mhm.
look into someone's eyes, that's it. Like you can't be in your mind. So I practice a lot of like, okay, eye contact. Let's get into the acting mode, but then also maintaining the eye contact and let's just own whatever it is that we learned. And I see my students like months later just being wowed by the fact that like they didn't really think about what they're gonna say in this new language that they're learning, and it just coming out. And that's like that's the new concept that I want to introduce people to here in Japan because the education system around language learning is really logic based, which is like it has its place, but I feel like we really do need more like interactive and intuitive methods of learning in order to really, well, it goes back to the question like, why are you even learning it in the first place? Like, we're here to, you know, it's kind of like a self expression tool or a self exploration tool or like a communication tool to connect with other people. And I think a lot of people forget.
My God, yes. I know I have as I learn Japanese. Like I get so caught up in the judgments or the comparisons. And the reason why I want to be able to speak well in the first place is to communicate with my family or people in society. It's a connection tool. It's a way that you can see what's in someone's heart and mind. And yeah, there's so much there that you shared. Honestly, it got me really thinking a lot about how learning the paradigm of it needs to be a specific textbook logic way really is or should be shifting. I think I see it more where people like especially with language learning, there needs to be different approaches.
Mm.
And I like this idea of a more intuitive, embodied approach. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna have to pick your ear way more, even after this conversation with it. I'm like, wow, I'm so interested with this too. Like, really am. Even as I teach some of my classes at the university I'm at, sometimes really see when students are so in their heads and it's just going nowhere. So figuring out ways to have more an intuitive, somatic approach to learning, it
Yeah.
will be so important for all of us to learn. At least have a mixed method approach. Of
Yeah.
course, we're not saying that this method of logic is bad, but
Mhm.
we need other ways of learning. And yeah, some people just need different ways. Like, I think I learn best kinesthetically. I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I really learn best like when I'm walking, or I have the best ideas when I'm like at a dance class. Like I get so many downloads when
Okay.
I'm in movement. Literally like on in a car ride too, I feel so creative. And I've talked with others about this too, and they're like, yeah, it's you're definitely a kinesthetic learner
Mhm.
then. Or you can also be so there's kinesthetic, there is visual. You learn more with visual representations. I don't know, I think there's a couple more learnings.
Visual, I think auditory
Auditory, yeah,
and
that's a big
also
one.
hands-on.
Yes, you like physically need to be doing
Yeah.
the thing to be learning. Yeah. Wow, oh my gosh. I'm so happy that this led to this conversation.
Oh, very unexpected, but
No, I know. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And I've always wanted, because whenever Emily and I meet, we usually do go into the pretty um, esoteric conversations.
yeah.
And so I haven't been able to ask you more about like, yeah, your English classes and code. I always knew that you were teaching that, but I've never heard about you integrating this approach into it. So I think it's so interesting. I do now want to ask you how, because we've been talking about learnings, language learnings, and like your background, and now you're kind of at a crossroads right now. I sped up that, but you're at a crossroads right now. Is there any sort of learnings or insights that you've gained through this specific transition time in your life? Because I think a lot of us are going through transitions and change. Like, what's kind of on your heart right now as you are in this time in your life?
Uh, a lot, a lot of realizations. The biggest one I think is just realizing how much I lost by rushing.
Mm.
It's like
Explain.
such a big lesson. And I feel like I'm going through like a bit of a grief process even. Because I realized that by me not tuning into my heart more often, and it's like not, it's understandable. I feel like most of us in our 20s, we feel like we need to hurry up and get somewhere. Um, like it's like a race, like, oh, that person did this and that person did this, and I have to like hurry up and like be someone already. Like, there's so much pressure, and it doesn't help that, you know, there is like a sense of judgment, like in society around like accomplishment and achievement. Like, I'm not gonna be like, hey, like, no, don't worry, like, no one's judging. Like, people are. it's and yeah, it does contribute to this culture of rushing and not taking your time, not being mindful about what you're doing, asking yourself why you're doing it. Um, and even if you know what you're doing, like, are you doing it in a way where you feel like you're really taking it in, like embodying it, or are you just kind of focusing on the outcome all the time? And I have to admit that a lot of times I got into that mode of only the outcome matters. Like, obviously, like I've always been somebody who wanted to take care of my like holistic health, so just like my mind, body, spirit, but I would just slip into that mode like unconsciously even and catch myself later on and be like, "Oh my gosh, like it didn't feel good, you know? It just doesn't feel good." And I know this doesn't maybe apply to everyone, and I'm not saying like achievement and accomplishment is a bad thing in and of itself. And I know some people are more geared towards the whole like um productivity and it like lights them up, but like that's not the only way. It's not the right way. It's not something that we should feel ashamed of ourselves for if that doesn't like resonate with us. And I've lost a lot by like subscribing to a lot of these ideas. And feeling like if I don't, then I'm not gonna get anywhere in life. And now I'm realizing if I had just like really less is more, like if I adopted that mindset, like really giving myself time and space to grow at my own pace and checking in with myself to see if my choices are aligned, if how I'm doing that thing is aligned. Um, I actually would have gotten to where I wanted to go faster. I can't even count the amount of times that I burned out overriding my body. Like it happens. Like you cannot override your body. Like no matter how hard you try, especially like for more like yin energy oriented people like us, where we're like deep feelers. We prioritize like connection and nourishment. Like it just doesn't happen. Like the way that society wants it to happen. So yeah, just reminding myself every day, like, it's okay. You're where you're supposed to be. Even if that doesn't, like, even if people don't understand that from the outside looking at me, like, maybe they may have their own perception, but um, being like, it's okay because I know who I am. Or maybe I don't know who I am, and that's okay, but I have me, you know? I'm here with myself, and that's enough, and believing that that's enough.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is so I resonate a lot, especially with these structures that, I mean, society just feeds off of productive, high achieving people. And I think we're both from productive, capitalistic cultures like US and Japan.
Oh, yeah.
So of course, when you get an Emily or a Nina put into these spaces, it's like, and it sounds like you've really needed to learn through kind of these health issues or hitting the rock bottom or to show you like this is not sustainable. This is not working for me. This might work for my friend over here or my family member or whoever it is, but it's not for me. And what
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say is it's like you're coming back to yourself through this honesty. And that's just the most powerful thing you can do in a society that tells you that that's not the way you should be, or that's not successful, or that's not whatever it is. But what's interesting is there's so many people that have created incredible, beautiful, aligned lives with this
Mhm.
approach that you're talking about. And that's what resonates a lot with me in terms of building a business, for example, too. I don't want to do it. Like we've kind of talked about this as well. It's not like the blood, sweat, tears
Uh,
approach that you're
yeah.
working so many hours glued to your computer. Like, I cannot build and create off of that lifestyle. And I know, yeah, we've definitely talked about this before. It's like there's never just, it's not a cookie cutter approach
Mhm.
with things. And people that are, yeah, as you said, connected intuitively, more of the feminine, more of the feelers, the nurturers. There's a reason why you might have built up resentment towards people or society for making you feel like there's something wrong with you or you're not enough if you don't work in this specific way or you're not living in this specific fast-paced way. I'm curious what kind of practices or how do you kind of come back? Because, okay, let me formulate a question. As you are living in a fast-paced society, big city, Tokyo, how are you able to come back to yourself when there's like chaos all around you or people that are very like go go or it might be you're working with someone in the past before that had this different approach but
Mhm.
you didn't like how are you able to navigate those relationships
Yeah.
or environments.
Well, number one is like I have to accept that that's gonna happen like literally anywhere I go for the
Yeah.
most part. Um, and just accepting it and being like, I don't know, just like having a bird's eye view of the whole entire situation. And it helps like going like I'm kind of glad that I have the experience of like burning out or like dealing with health issues because I overrided my system because it really helped me face the fact that like I really have to take this seriously. Like this isn't a matter of like, oh, I just don't want to do it. Like it's like no, it's a matter of like me living my life or not. So like
Hmm.
knowing that and then knowing that yeah, that's not like the usual environment I'm gonna find myself in, and being equipped to stay with myself in that environment. Well, I guess you can say like have boundaries in a sense. Um, but I feel like it's hard because when I say boundaries, um, again, when we think of boundaries logically, we might say like, oh, like saying no and saying that I need this, and that's also very important. Like we need that, but like more like also energetic boundaries.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, you really have to feel like where like in like this is like me and this is that's you. Like if you can feel that, if you can feel yourself, because maybe we might be able to feel ourselves when we're in our room when there's no one around. But like when we go into a space, like can you maintain that feeling or do you get like taken away to like the pace of the environment or whatever the other person is saying? And I feel like that's not something that you can just say like on the spot like I'm like no, like you have to train yourself to be able to stay inside your body wherever you go, and that takes like um practice. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of like having any sort of practice. Like it doesn't even have to be big, it doesn't have to be long, just like even 2 minutes of like something that bring like strengthens your connection to your body like every day. And even if you can't do it every day, every other day, then like um that is key for me. Like if I don't have that, then I will unconsciously slip into other people's worlds, other people's ideas and their beliefs, and I will start, rushing again, trying to hustle, be like really productive just for the sake of being productive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I think that's really, really good advice always just coming back to the body, even observing how you are when you're in a room or in a conversation with someone that you don't necessarily agree with inside, but you find yourself wanting to keep the peace or mirroring the person and just observing what's happening in the body during that time. I found myself whenever I tend to merge or kind of start to live like others, it's when I'm disconnected from body and therefore myself. And later you start to build resentment towards that person for making you feel or do things that you don't want to do. But then it's like, but you are playing a role in this too. It's not just them, it's you too. So I like this really beautiful, simple practice of coming back to the body. I think that's been helping me personally a lot lately when I just am in a conversation or asked to do something or go somewhere, just really checking in. Is this what I want? Or is this really, am I feeling uncomfortable right now? Because I feel like I need to say yes, but it's more so I don't upset or disappoint the other person. But in doing that, I'm really abandoning my needs and self for just totally not acknowledging what's happening here in the body. So I think this can be in itself its own podcast episode that maybe we can do together one day.
It's a big
But
topic. A lot of
yeah, this is a really good, and also energetic boundaries. This is a really, really great point that you made. That is so, so true. Where, yeah, we usually think of the verbal boundaries or asking for the needs, like you pointed out, but it's the energetic that actually is the key to
oh
being really just because people can read your energy, even if you're just like, no, I don't want to do that. But energetically, it's like, you're not maybe you don't believe that you deserve to say no. People can read that
yeah.
very clearly. We're all energetic readers, whether you believe that or not. We all can feel people's
Oh
energies.
yeah.
And there's many times that I've heard from friends or even I've experienced, like I said no, but for some reason they were able to make me do it anyway or something like that. It's like, energetically, then there's something there that we need to work on. It's past the verbal. It's like we need to connect those.
It's very tricky and it's not easy. But it was a very big key because I was in the verbal boundary phase and I could find myself getting into um, this space where I know what my boundary is, but I just can't enforce it. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. And I don't know, a lot of people say just do it, but for me, I I felt like there was maybe a more because like forcing myself also didn't feel good. Like when I'm like freaking out inside. So like the energetic boundary thing kind of helped me a little bit because maybe um I found myself like realizing that sometimes like you don't even have to say anything. Like if you can really just embody that boundary inside of you, like it will resonate like energetically to the other person and they'll know like okay, she's just not the type of person to like, you know. And sometimes like embodying it will help you say what you need to say because you'll feel safe enough in your body to be like, okay, um, I can say whatever I need to say and I'll be okay. Like we need that sense of like I can do this, I can survive before maybe like forcing ourselves to like do something that maybe we're not ready to quite yet.
That's so, so true. It makes me want to start practicing when I'm thinking about boundaries, thinking about it always as a connection to the energetics of stating and feeling into it because I used to have this practice with boundaries in my journal where it would be like verbally, what is the boundary? And then why is this boundary like a must? Like it's very important to me, just behind the boundary, why, the why behind it. And then energetically, I'm gonna have to look back on how I did this, but energetically, like where am I there? Where am I at with this specific boundary? Like when I say it out loud, how does it feel in my body? If I feel a
Mhm.
little bit like, ooh, like kind of this, like you're shrinking energetically. Ideally, with a boundary, you're like strong in your
Mhm.
body and you're not like swaying. It's just like, and I find it's like a really, really good practice. And it's interesting because it changes also with the person as well when you kind of visualize it in the mind or you practice it out loud, thinking about this other person of what you want to say. And I feel my body like changing depending on the person or the stories that come to my mind. And then the energy is like, oh, but this person is a family member. So, oh, it's difficult. Boundaries are. It's
Very,
difficult.
it's
It's,
very,
it's,
I like
yeah.
that exercise. I'm gonna try
Yes.
it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to send you a picture of my journal when I found this through a book on boundaries that I was reading. Might be by Nedra Glover. I'll find this
Oh,
book.
I,
Do you know Nedra? I think
yeah,
this is something that she writes about in her book, like on boundaries and keeping peace. I would have to double check the title of that book,
I
but I
think
can
I
also,
know. Yeah, I followed her on Instagram, or I've been
yes.
following her on Instagram for a really long time.
She's great. She's great. And also I like Haley McGee. She talks a lot with people pleasing and boundaries as well. And she just published a book as well that I can link in the show notes. The title isn't coming to me, but she talks a lot about boundaries in the book too. But
Okay.
boundaries are just so, yeah, there's a reason why there's so many people talking about it because it really changes your life when you can really energetically, with confidence and coming back to your worth, like say it from the heart. And it's also, boundaries is love as well. It's something that I had to unlearn thinking, oh, it's something mean or something that makes me a bad person for saying what I need. But no, it's actually teaching someone how to love you and treat you. And I always think I would want the same for someone to tell me if something is missing or bothering them or whatever. So,
I agree. It's um it's such a complex it's a complex issue in Japan, I feel like.
yeah, that is
Which is
true.
like a whole nother conversation, but I feel like it's I'm not saying it's like easier in more like individualistic cultures like the US. It's definitely not. Like boundaries is hard no matter where you are, but just like when you're in like such a um group oriented culture, like boundaries will literally get you exiled like historically wise. So it's been, I feel like, weird navigating what I've learned because I read a lot in English and just applying that here in Japan is just like a different thing for me.
Right.
I feel like I definitely set boundaries better in English. Like in Japan, in Japanese, it's been a little bit hard. It's like being direct. It's hard to be direct in Japanese. Like the language itself is very subtle. And um, the projection that happens when you set boundaries is like a whole different thing to like learn to navigate. I feel like.
That is so true. Okay, we need to have Emily back on the podcast to talk about this through a cultural lens because I'm like, wow, this can be so helpful for people that are living in Japan or like I'm just so interested what this conversation is like in Japanese society because I have no idea,
Okay.
honestly. I all I know is I know what you mean by it feels the language makes it difficult to be
Hmm.
direct. And I think that also creates a lot of frustration and anger for people that are foreigners living in this country and experiencing a workplace or a friend group. And just why is it like this with communication?
So
So that can
yeah,
be a really good conversation for next time.
I'm being honest. Like I've been fired for setting boundaries, so
Oh my God.
I have been fired for setting a boundary before at a workplace, and I think that's
Wow.
how hard it is because of the whole like what's the word, the joge kanke we say in Japanese, joge kanke. It's people who are older than you or have more experience have more say in what's um, right and wrong
Mm-hmm.
in the group. So telling your boss like, hey, like that wasn't okay, or like, hey, I need this, isn't really like typically seen as good employee behavior.
Right.
Or even just like they might be the same status as you, like an employee, but maybe they've been there longer, so you can't really say like, hey, no, I can't really do that for you, or like, I mean, you can, and I'm not saying you can't, and I'm not saying that like you're gonna get fired. That was just like a very special case, I think. But I do feel like there is definitely a stronger stigma around advocating for yourself in a group setting.
Hmm. This is a conversation to be continued because I also want to hear about the story as well.
Oh,
But there is just so much that I really am grateful for with this conversation today. Like, there's just so many insights that I've been able to download through you sharing more about who you are, your work, where you're at in life. And I'm just so excited to see what steps you decide to take while you are at this crossroads and major transition. I do want to ask you, where can listeners find you or connect with you?
yeah. Um, so I'm mostly on Instagram. Uh, should I say my username on here?
You can say your username, and then also I'll link it at the show notes so listeners can also find your information there
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. I mostly post things in Japanese, since I'm mostly like doing this work in Japan, but yeah, I have some clients who speak English, so um Emily, two I's, period, M 25 is my username for people who'd like to follow me. Um yeah, I think that's my main way of contact.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing from your heart. There's so many topics that I'm excited to dive deeper in with you in the future. I really feel that right now.
Yeah.
And yes, I will link all of the information that Emily just shared in the show notes and some of the books that we talked about as well. I'll also link an article about Saturn return so you can learn a little bit more about what we're talking about and what we're in, and maybe you're in right now as well. So thank you so much, Emily, and thank you so much to all the listeners as well for tuning in. This has been such a great episode, and I'm excited for more in the future with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, oh my gosh. I really love our conversations like every single time. Like you bring like such a deep side of me out so naturally. So yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for everyone for watching and listening. And I'd love to hear what everybody thinks about what we talked about too.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much and have a beautiful day.